This is Part 2 Soul Land 2 Episode 39. However, a mysterious scene occurred the instant that golden leaf sliced through the Soul Light's beam of light. The golden leaf passed straight through it, as though it had not encountered any resistance at all. Yi Wuqing was originally planning to use his golden leaf to block Hu Yuhao's attack, causing it to explode and generate an explosive force from the metallic storm it would create. He was confident in stopping Hu Yuhao's next move before using an even stronger soul skill on him and Bei Bei. However, he had made a mistake. Hu Yuhao clearly knew of the difficulties involved in this match. Due to this pressure, his potential was fully unleashed, not just in strength, but also in his wisdom. The most ingenious part of his attack was right here. His imitation allowed him to make minute transformations to the things around him, and the more minute these transformations were, the harder it would be to tell that they were fake. The entire process of charging towards Shangguan Can was real, the only thing that was fake was the soul paralysis ray. The reason why it had curved was because it had left the range of his imitation. No matter how strong Yi Wuqing was, he would definitely be unable to dodge a strange move like this. Yi Wuqing had been paralyzed, while Shangguan Can had been forced into retreating in a sorry state. At this moment, Bei Bei, Hu Yuhao, and Wang Dong only had to face a single person, Yang. She had launched 5 large fireballs, but Bei Bei had no plans of allowing the 2 fireballs directed toward Hu Yuhao from striking their target. Countless lightning snakes shot out simultaneously, then transformed into countless arrows of lightning that explosively blasted everything. This was Bei Bei's second soul skill, Vigorous Thunderbolt. The tyrannical net of lightning collided with the 5 fireballs, filling the sky with sparks. The terrifying impact coming from that collision was so great that even the paralyzed Yi Wuqing was forced to stagger a few steps backwards. At this moment, the most powerful use of Wang Dong's wings was revealed. As he flapped his wings, Hu Yuhao changed directions, allowing him to not only dodge the aftereffects of the golden leaf's explosion, but also allowing him to soar into the air. He flew past Bei Bei's head, bringing Hu Yuhao straight towards Yang. Right? From the very start, Hu Yuhao and Bei Bei's target wasn't Yi Wuqing or Shangguan Can. As an auxiliary-type soul master, although Shangguan Can wasn't weak, he couldn't provide too much assistance to his teammates due to Hu Yuhao's spirit eyes. Moreover, Yi Wuqing was strong to the point where even if Hu Yuhao's trio were to take him on 1v3, they might not be able to defeat him directly. Hu Yuhao's eyes had become completely jade green. Although he still had 2 soul rings in front of him due to his imitation, he had actually switched his martial soul to the Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion. This was a martial soul that possessed ultimate ice, a martial soul that could cause Shrek Academy's Sea Gods Pavilion to hold a meeting. Even the great powers within Shrek Academy were overjoyed beyond belief when discovering the existence of Hu Yuhao's ultimate ice. From that, the power of his Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion could be seen. His soul power wasn't up to par, but his martial soul and soul rings were unrivaled existences. Hu Yuhao's gaze turned serious, and the soul thruster on his back flickered with light as he shot towards Yang like a bolt of lightning. Unexpectedly, he used his hands to directly swat at Yang's purple fireball. In that brief moment, Yi Wuqing finally recovered from his paralysis. Shangguan Can, who had barely avoided the golden leaf's explosion, also crawled up. They never imagined that there would be such an elemental suppression as they watched Yang being oppressed by Hu Yuhao. Unfortunately, they were currently unable to move forward and assist Yang, because Bei Bei was still in front of them. When Hu Yuhao had leapt over his head and pounced at Yang, Bei Bei had also lunged forward. However, his target was not Yang, but Yi Wuqing. Thus, the moment Yi Wuqing was released from his paralysis, he immediately saw Bei Bei charging towards him. What he needed to do now was protect himself, and thus he was unable to save his companions. This scene was somewhat similar to the previous round where Xiao Xiao blocked their opponents to allow He Kai-tu to build up power. However, there was no doubt that Shrek Academy's current situation was much better. Vigorous Thunderbolt. Bei Bei unleashed his area of effect skill at close proximity without hesitation. Enormous bolts of lightning devastated the sky, forming a giant lightning net. Yi Wuqing could not send out a golden leaf even if he wanted to. The 2 who had clashed with words earlier now stood face to face. As Yi Wuqing watched the enormous lightning pounce at him, his eyes suddenly turned golden. It was as if 2 golden leaves were covering his eyes. At the same time, the first and third soul rings on his body simultaneously lit up. At least a dozen golden leaves shot out from his hands, instantly turning into a golden net in the air that brazenly flew towards Bei Bei's vigorous thunderbolt. Due to the powerful explosive force the golden leaf had displayed previously, Bei Bei involuntarily paused. He did not want to be surrounded and blasted by so many golden leaves. However, he quickly realized that he had made a mistake, because although they were still the same golden leaves, their ability was different. Each golden leaf was akin to a sharp blade. The leaves forcibly sliced his vigorous thunderbolt apart, before sweeping towards his body like a wild storm. This was Yi Wuqing's first soul skill, Leaf Blade, and third soul skill, Leaf Formation. It was this offensive style that he was most proficient with. Under his control, sharp golden leaves headed straight for Bei Bei. At this very moment, Bei Bei had a certain feeling. If he were to be trapped within this leaf formation, his entire body would be ripped to shreds. However, could he retreat at such a time? This was the Continental Advanced Academy Soul Dueling Tournament. For Just Sky Academy, this was an important battle that would affect its history and glory. How could they be unprepared? The moment Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong lunged at Yang, she had already realized that the situation was not optimal. However, such a situation was still within their expectations. This was not the first time Hu Yuhao's ultimate ice power had seen use. Furthermore, while Just Sky Academy was researching Shrek Academy, they concluded that although Hu Yunhao's strength could not possibly be at the Soul Emperor level, he was still the opponent they needed to pay the most attention to. This was because he was a mystery. In their analysis of Hu Yuhao, he possessed very powerful spiritual power, but Sky Academy did not believe that his martial soul was of the spiritual element. It should be the ice element instead. Moreover, it should be a very strong ice element. This was due to the fact that Hu Yuhao had directly taken control of the Frost Bear and Lingye's soul skill during that round of the competition. Although it was close to the end of the soul skill, how could one do this without strong ice controlling powers? The reason why Yang had been dispatched during the final match was because Yi Wuqing had predicted that Hu Yuhao would also appear in the final match. A powerful ice element would surely be able to suppress the fire element. Since that was so, it was very easy for Yi Wuqing to guess that Hu Yuhao would target Yang. It was just that their original plan did not account for the fact that he could bring such powerful suppressive abilities to bear. Yang's fireball martial soul was ultimately unable to withstand Hu Yuhao's ultimate ice. Even her fourth soul skill, Flame Prison's Cage, was unable to threaten Hu Yuhao. Bei Bei had already used all his energy to unleash his vigorous thunderbolt. But even so, he couldn't electrocute his opponent with the golden left hand suppressing him. His opponent had completely overpowered him with his fourth soul skill powered by his rank 58 soul power, bastard. Bei Bei roared out and unleashed his third soul skill Thunderous Fury, the powerful 1000-year soul skill. A blue lightning tyrant dragon soul master would be in a berserk state for a set period of time when the Thunderous Fury was activated. The power of the user's thunder would double, while his or her soul power would increase by half of what it originally was. One could say that Bei Bei was only the strongest when he used his Thunderous Fury. His power that had previously been suppressed stabilized in a flash. The terrifying thunderbolt also broke through the golden left hand's control and spread over Yi Wuqing. However, it was at this moment that Bei Bei saw the cold look in Yi Wuqing's eye, which caused him to curse out in his heart. Without the slightest hint of hesitation, Bei Bei continuously released his second soul skill, Vigorous Thunderbolt. His tremendous thunderbolts immediately turned into a thick electrical net that shrouded his whole body. Yi Wuqing protected himself within the electrical net with a light shield made of his dense white soul power. Even though he was rapidly depleting his soul power, he didn't face a direct attack from the vigorous thunderbolt in the end. This was the disparity in soul power. If both parties were at the same level of cultivation, it would definitely be impossible for him to do this. Yi Wuqing hadn't done anything else all this while. What was he waiting for? He was waiting for his golden leaf. Yi Wuqing rapidly swung his golden left hand out, and his second soul ring shone. Golden leaves rapidly fell to the ground and exploded into intense balls of light, forming a huge golden storm. It neutralized all those hidden weapons, but it also made him miss the chance to flank Bei Bei. Bei Bei didn't relax either. In the end, he didn't destroy all the golden leaves. 2 golden rays of light flashed past his body. One grazed his right shoulder, sending a string of sparks in its wake. The dragon scales on his right shoulder were much thicker when he was in his thunderous fury state, so the attack was unable to slice them open. However, another golden leaf flitted across his chest and left a small gash, about half a meter long in its wake. Blood splashed out and dyed Bei Bei's lapel red in the blink of an eye. The sharp golden leaf had cut his pectoral muscles and caused his flesh to roll back, making for an extremely horrifying sight. Yi Wuqing finally didn't hold back anymore. His opponent was only a soul ancestor, but he was much more troublesome than he had imagined. The whole aura around Yi Wuqing changed when his fifth black soul ring lit up. He slowly raised his golden left hand and waved his hand at the sky. Looking at him, it looked as though he wanted to tear through the sky. Specks of golden light shone on that black soul ring. The small golden specks of light rapidly floated out and encompassed his body, forming a golden light canopy. There were only tens of leaves in the previous leaf formation, but now there were hundreds, or even thousands of golden leaves. The leaves rapidly whirled around with his body as their center. The whole stage immediately sparkled with a brilliant golden light. This was the difference between a 10,000-year soul skill and a 1,000-year soul skill. Yi Wuqing once again showed everyone how terrifying a 10,000-year soul skill was, with this being the second time one had appeared in this year's tournament. At this moment, Bei Bei turned around with much difficulty, since he'd just sustained injuries. Now, he had to face Yi Wuqing's terrifying golden leaf that was just like a tornado. Yi Wuqing coldly said, "This is my fifth soul skill, Golden Leaf Dance. You guys better admit defeat, if you don't want to turn into pieces of meat." Shangguan Can had already stood up, and was standing not too far behind Yi Wuqing. He didn't even try to ring the soul-absorbing bell, as a look of victory appeared on his face. Just Sky Academy was about to triumph over Shrek Academy. He was one of the very last participants remaining on stage, who was about to bear witness to this very moment. How could he not feel excited? However, the power of Bei Bei's ability had far surpassed his judgment. His thunderous domain gradually forced its way over to Yi Wuqing till it was right in front of him. "Little junior brother, now." Bei Bei roared out and stomped with his right leg. His thunderous domain rushed forth, but gradually weakened till it disappeared at the same time. Yi Wuqing's whole body was enveloped within it, completely covered with golden lightning. He was paralyzed. Yu Hao naturally understood what his senior brother meant. He immediately turned around, and was about to hug Wang Dong, when he heard a clear jingle ring out at the same time. He subconsciously stopped what he was about to do and looked over from the corner of his eye. The scene that graced his eyes took him back by surprise. An evil, dark red light emerged from his soul-sucking bell, which then transformed into a series of halos. They immediately struck Bei Bei, who'd just finished using the tyrannical emperor's thunderous domain. Bei Bei's entire body trembled violently when he was struck, and his eyes turned blank. Shangguan Can then pointed towards Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong, and Bei Bei unexpectedly turned around and shot straight towards them. A spiritual control type soul skill. Shangguan Can actually has a soul skill like this. Considering how powerful Bei Bei's martial soul was, his spiritual power definitely wasn't weak. Yet, Shangguan Can had still been able to temporarily take control of his mind. This greatly startled both Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong. Fortunately, the hypnotized Bei Bei was only able to follow his instincts. He couldn't display the finesse he usually possessed when he fought clear-headed. Furthermore, he was currently in a weakened state from using the tyrannical emperor's thunderous domain. Hu Yuhao suddenly stopped in mid-air, as Wang Dong flapped his wings, which caused him to fly backwards a few meters, Bei Bei in tow. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong then hugged each other tightly. On the one hand, you had Hu Yuhao, whose spirit eyes began to emit a faint gold color, while on the other, you had Wang Dong, whose beautiful wings had been entirely unfurled as he released his radiant butterfly goddess. When they hugged each other and released their martial souls, the 10 or so meters around them lit up as a special sort of light blossomed from their bodies. As blue, purple, and gold light began to fill their surroundings, and Wang Dong's complete and gorgeous radiant butterfly goddess folded its wings forwards in a hugging motion. After being touched by Hu Yuhao, the traces of gold on Bei Bei's body receded. However, he immediately fell straight towards the ground. The golden road could cause one's martial soul to collapse, but it also possessed a powerful erosive effect. After using his tyrannical emperor's thunderous domain to block Yi Wuqing's most powerful attack, while draining as much of his soul power as he could, Bei Bei was like a lamp whose oil was nearly extinguished. Hence, it was very difficult for Hu Yuhao to achieve the lowest requirement necessary to activate this soul skill. He could only barely release it now, even when he borrowed Wang Dong's power. It was impossible for the flame prison cage to resist the domain of perpetual ice, since the latter completely dominated the former in terms of attribute, annihilating the flame prison cage in an instant. The audience seemed to witness the return of that Soul Emperor with 6 soul rings, when they felt the tyrannical aura Hu Yuhao exuded in that moment. Wang Dong grabbed Hu Yuhao's shoulders and rushed back to the stage after breaking through the flame prison cage. Their legs hadn't come in contact with the ground, so they naturally could continue participating in the tournament. However, Hu Yuhao didn't move an inch after he landed firmly on the ground as he squinted his eyes. If one were to take a closer look, they would realize that the rays of light surrounding his body were slightly distorted. It was obvious that he was using imitation again, with the remnants of his soul power. However, there didn't seem to be any changes happening around his body on the surface. What was he trying to hide? The thing he was trying to hide were the ripples of silver light that belonged to his Class 4 milk bottle flowing out from his chest. How could he continue fighting if he practically had no soul power left? He was hiding this silver light with his imitation. Perhaps Hu Yuhao wasn't the first to use a milk bottle during a tournament, but he was the one who hid it best. Him recovering his soul power was equivalent to restoring both his and Wang Dong's soul power together. The soul power coursing into his body quickly transformed into one that belonged to the both of them. That was why the milk bottle was priced so high. Other than being able to store and compress soul power, there was another very important point, and that was the purification of soul power. Any soul master could use the milk bottle after having another soul master inject soul power into it. That was because after the soul power entered the milk bottle, it would go through a round of filtering in the milk bottle's core, which would remove anything related to the soul power's attribute or power. The end product would be the purest form of soul power. Only then could others or the owner absorb it, and at a rapid speed too. The milk bottle Hu Yuhao had obtained from the auction was undoubtedly an exquisite Class 4 product. He felt an endless stream of soul power feeding into his body, rapidly refilling his dried-up meridians. Naturally, the downside of using the milk bottle was that he couldn't fight or move. He had to calmly stand where he was and concentrate on absorbing the soul power from the milk bottle. It was considerably difficult for Hu Yuhao to use imitation while absorbing the external soul power. His dexterous control was all thanks to him being a spirit-type soul master. Hu Yuhao had finally managed to keep his strong opponents under control after going through a series of dangerous attacks, finally reducing their opponents by 1. Just as he managed to do so, the battle on the other side of the field had reached its climax too. Bei Bei also felt it when Hu Yuhao was in danger, but he was too preoccupied with Yi Wuqing's golden leaf formation. Bei Bei didn't back away when he was faced with that incomparably sharp golden leaf formation, but instead, he charged onwards and faced it head-on. At this moment, he seemed to be deeply connected with Yi Wuqing as the both of them had a small smile playing on their lips. The difference was that the smile on Yi Wuqing's face was one of disdain. Do you think your scales can block my ever-changing golden leaves? On the other hand, Bei Bei's smile was a little crafty and evil. Do you think such puny leaves can block my path? Bei Bei had already penetrated the golden leaf formation when both of them held these thoughts in their minds. In their eyes, everyone from the Shrek Academy was a monster. Shu Sancha could awaken his Xuanwu god beast at the 11th hour. Xiao Xiao had twin martial souls. He Kaitu wielded that terrifying super energy-gathering soul cannon. Only the heavens knew what other shocking changes these remaining 3 would show. That was why Just Sky Academy had held back a little at the beginning, but even then everything had been within a series of set calculations. However, they had never expected that Hu Yuhao could release such a terrifying soul skill like the domain of perpetual ice and reduce their numbers by 1 in an instant. How could he sit idly by and watch his senior brother struggle to fight alone? When the milk bottle replenished a certain amount of his soul power, he immediately attacked Shangguan Can, who was attempting to interfere with Bei Bei's attacks. He eliminated the soul-sucking bell's threat with just a single spiritual shock. After which, he reactivated the milk bottle again, and continued replenishing both his and Wang Dong's soul power. Bei Bei's thick and solid right arm was covered in bluish-purple dragon scales, as it sparked with lightning. He swatted it right in front of Yi Wuqing as all the golden leaves chased him from behind. Even so, Bei Bei seemed to be completely disregarding them. It didn't matter how strong a Soul King's attack was, because all would be futile if the attack didn't land on their opponent. Yi Wuqing was still expressionless, but he didn't retreat. He suddenly raised his left hand when faced with Bei Bei's attack, clenching it as he faced Bei Bei's dragon claw up front. Bang! Yi Wuqing blocked his thunderous dragon claw with his fist, startling Bei Bei. Yi Wuqing turned his left hand and grabbed a hold of Bei Bei's dragon claw. The meridians in Yu Wuqing's left hand suddenly became bigger in a split second, and a large quantity of venitive veins dazzled in gold. His whole hand turned completely golden as his fourth soul ring lit up. Was a long-range soul master really that weak? Yu Wuqing's actions proved to everyone that that might not necessarily be the case. This was his fourth soul skill, the golden left hand. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so easily controlled by Shangguan Can. Right after that, he had to suffer the corrosive effects of the Golden Road. Although Hui Yuhao had quickly dispelled the effects of the fusion skill, Bei Bei directly fainted due to overexertion. As Wang Dong held the milk bottle in his hands, he looked towards the charging Hui Yuhao with a complicated look in his eyes. At this moment, he was inwardly screaming a single phrase, you can't use a soul tool. Yu Wuqing currently resembled a golden man. Although he had rank 58 soul power, he had drained an utterly enormous amount of it during his battle with Bei Bei. How could he not panic after losing the use of his martial soul? He would need a period of time to dispel the negative effects of the Golden Road. At this moment, Hui Yuhao arrived in front of him. Even if I don't have a martial soul, can a soul grandmaster like you threaten me? Yu Wuqing said arrogantly. He sent his right fist flying through the air to meet Hui Yuhao's attack. A ball of soul power condensed into a white light, which then used his fist as a conduit as it flew out. Hui Yuhao once again used the Ice Empress pincer, as he sent his palms forward to meet Yu Wuqing. After controlling Bei Bei, Shangguan Can had seemingly fallen silent. However, he was actually focused on absorbing the soul power provided by a milk bottle, and he paid no attention to the current situation of the battle. In the next moment, Hui Yuhao's aura suddenly changed. He didn't undergo the violent transformation or visual differences that Xu Sanxia and Bei Bei had gone through when they releasing their hidden powers. However, the current Hui Yuhao was much more terrifying in Yu Wuqing's eyes. While using the Ice Empress, Hui Yuhao's eyes would occasionally flicker with a jade-green light. This was a natural phenomena caused by the appearance of that particular martial soul. At this moment, however, his eyes turned a penetrating color of jade, making it seem as though his eyes were precious gems that sparkled with light. Hui Yuhao's body was instantly taken over by the Ice Empress. The voice of the latter rang out in the depths of Hui Yuhao's soul, watch carefully. You have to be adept at using every bit of strength that you have, and you need to diligently train your control over your strength. If you want to defeat the strong while being weak, the only technique you can use is control. The Ice Empress didn't use the Ghost Shadow perplexing track. She shot directly forward, and the tattoo of the Ice Empress on Hui Yuhao's back turned extraordinarily bright and clear. However, his body emitted no traces of chilliness at all. Yu Wuqing felt his heart thump, as he sensed the sudden changes in Hui Yuhao. At this exact moment, the effects of the Golden Road vanished. Overjoyed, Yu Wuqing's first reaction was to once again release his martial soul to block Hui Yuhao. As he releasing it, he didn't forget to send a punch out, causing an even more condensed ball of soul power to stop the advancing Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao raised his right hand. To put it more accurately, the Ice Empress raised Hui Yuhao's right hand. She pointed a single finger towards the incoming ball of soul power, then gently tapped it. Wang Dong had already rushed out when Hui Yuhao was unconscious, and Shangguan Can also stopped recovering his soul power with the milk bottle. A sinister smile crept over Shangguan Can's face as he watched Wang Dong, looking confident of winning. Previously, when Hui Yuhao's soul power had been completely sucked away, Wang Dong had been unable to even utilize his martial soul. Now, he looked like a helpless child. Certainly, Wang Dong was unable to make Shangguan Can feel threatened. In the end, I'm still the one who has to put an end to this competition. Shangguan Can said as he walked slowly towards Wang Dong, soul-sucking bell in hand. Wang Dong, who'd been running as fast as possible towards Hui Yuhao, stopped in his tracks. Behind Wang Dong lay a long unconscious Bei Bei, whose chest was still bleeding. In front of Wang Dong, Hui Yuhao lay similarly unconscious, with his lips pulled tensely together. Seeing this, the look in Wang Dong's eyes turned fierce. I suggest you bring the two of them down, and then leave yourself. You can only pass 2 rounds. I'm a 4-ringed soul ancestor, you don't stand a chance. Shangguan Can said, sniggering at Wang Dong. Wang Dong responded coldly, you're just a auxiliary type soul ancestor. What makes you so sure you can beat me? Senior brother Bei Bei once said, don't assume victory prematurely. Wang Dong said as he took long strides towards Shangguan Can. Shangguan Can could have activated his 4th soul skill at this moment and controlled Wang Dong's spirit, but he wasn't in a hurry at all. Shrek Academy's members always put up such a strong front, and that only made him more determined to crush their persistence. It's futile. Do you still not understand that, kid? Your soul power is so depleted now that even your martial soul probably can't release any power. How are you going to fight me? Just give up quickly, then I won't hurt you. Shangguan Can said with a smile. What he wanted to see most was Shrek Academy's members bowing down in front of him. Wang Dong walked even faster, and said coldly, Are you certain that my martial soul is incapable of releasing any power? Both parties were now within 40 meters of each other. Shangguan Can seemed speechless for a moment, before he retorted, So what if you can still release power from your martial soul? I'm sure the best you can do is just release your martial soul. I can feel the weakness in your soul. Stop acting brave. From your martial soul, it seems that the battle style that you specialize in is focused on releasing energy, which is one of the styles that requires the most soul power from us soul masters. You obviously can't release any soul skills now, so stop pretending, it's useless. At that moment, a light appeared between Wang Dong's eyebrows, and the ball of golden light expanded at an astonishing speed, growing to a radius of about 10 meters, emitting a blinding light. Shangguan Can screamed, his mouth spewing fresh blood. He felt like his brain was about to split open, and the soul-sucking bell in his hand was shattered to pieces. The hammer in Wang Dong's hand flew out of his hand at this moment, drawing a beautiful and strong arc in the air as it flew straight towards Shangguan Can's chest. A figure appeared in front of Shangguan Can's body just in time. The strong body blocked the path of the hammer, and a ping sound could be heard as the hammer hit the body. The figure stepped 2 steps back to steady himself from the impact of the hammer, and remarked breathlessly, What a strong force. The black light converged, and before anyone could see the hammer that was about to emerge from the black light, it disappeared. Wang Dong's body shook a little, but he stood his ground. Wasn't that the Soul Sage judge who just blocked the attack for Shangguan Can? The judge's appearance meant that this competition had finally ended. They really won. Wang Yang watched, dumbstruck, as Wang Dong limped towards Hu Yuhao, his lips trembling. Wang Yang was rendered speechless. He could never have guessed that this team made up of 4 soul ancestors, 1 soul elder, and 2 soul grandmasters, could have defeated a strong team of 3 soul kings, and 4 soul ancestors. Yes, even Shrek couldn't believe it. He Kaitu was also stupefied. When he had lost the round, he had thought that it was the end. After all, the opposing team had still had a rank 58 soul king that had not entered the arena. A miracle happened again. Although Shrek Academy paid for their victory with blood, they did not lose the glory that belonged to the Shrek Academy. They won match. Shrek Academy had emerged victorious again. The whole match could only be described as immensely tragic. From the first round, Shusansha was already badly injured. Although he later exaggerated his injuries, Bei Bei had verified that the source of his injury was genuine. In the second round, He Kaitu had used all his power, and Xiao Xiao had sustained major injuries. Even her martial soul was crushed by her opponent. If not for the fact that she was born with 2 martial souls, this would have been a blow serious enough to force her departure from the competition. The third round didn't end any better, with Bei Bei unconscious after severe injuries, and Hu Yuhao on the ground, exhausted. Shockingly, the final victory was achieved by Wang Dong, whose soul power had already been completely depleted. In the 3 rounds of this match, it could be said that every one of Shrek's 7 monsters had tried their very best, and utilized every possible trick they had up their sleeves. They had won through sheer perseverance and will, despite being a much weaker team than their opponent, gaining the final victory. This victory was hard-earned, but to the Shrek Academy team and Shrek's 7 monsters, it was undoubtedly glorious. An unparalleled glory. Tears started to course uncontrollably down Wang Yang's cheeks, as he struggled to understand how Wang Dong had summoned a second martial soul, and the power with which Hu Yuhao had vanquished his opponent. The only thought that occupied his head was victory. They had achieved the final victory. Shrek had won. Victory for Shrek Academy in the Elite Continental Soul Master Academy tournament hadn't been so difficult for at least a few thousand years. This competition had certainly been difficult, but in Wang Yang's heart, this was more meaningful than an easy victory by Shrek Academy's regular members. He could see 7 stars gradually rising. In the near future, these 7 monsters would definitely become strong pillars of Shrek Academy. Far away, beyond the Imperial City and the battlements, the Star Luo Emperor had already taken off his crown. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.